Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles. We are here today to talk about a newly spoiled card from Ikoria. Now here's how we're doing it today. We're going to take a little old walk back through the history of Magic the Gathering so that we can start from the beginning in terms of creatures being hunted. That's the concept of today's video. The hunt is on. So when talking about hunted creatures, you have to go all the way back to Mercadian masks, because that's the first time we got one of these hunted style concepts, and there's been a number of different variations that they've chosen to show this hunted concept flavorfully. So the hunted Wampus, and I mean Wampus, that's a fun one to say. There's just something about it. What's up, girl? You want to come back to my Wampus room, huh? Anyways, 1 green and 3 for the hunted Wampus. It is a beast that says, when hunted Wampus comes into play, each other player may put a creature card from his or her hand into play under his or her control. The old crazy wording of Magic cards. And the flavor text says, just one can feed a dozen people for a month. So let's cover the most obvious part of this card, that it sucks. This card is garbage. I mean, really. If this is obviously a holdover from the old days of Magic the Gathering, where gigantic creatures had to have a drawback. Like, you've got to pay 4 mana for a 6/6. Doesn't have trample, doesn't have any other abilities, and you have to let your opponent put out a creature for free. That is absolutely insane. This card is trash from a gameplay perspective. Now, from a flavor perspective, you can see there is a Wampus that's being hunted. It's got kind of an elephantine sort of body where it's got that gray sort of thick scales you would see on a rhino or an elephant. Its head is a completely different color, very weirdly misshapen. It almost makes me think about that guy from that Mask movie, just this weird sort of lumpy face. Its mouth is open like it's bellowing in pain. It looks like an action shot where some kind of hunter has just managed to like get an arrow or a crossbow bolt lodged into the creature. The background surrounding it is pretty nice, right? Like, the forest that it showed in is quite enjoyable looking, and conceptually the card is very, very straightforward. The Wampus is hunted because it's a gigantic beast, and as a result of this, there's a lot of meat and it can feed a lot of people. So it's a survival style scenario, and basically when they find that there's a Wampus is around, it's time to go on a hunt. So the flavor of the card is actually tied together quite well, but the power level of the card is absurdly low. This is a terrible, terrible card. Now, we didn't actually get another hunted creature concept for a number of years. It wasn't until the Ravnica, the original Ravnica block, that we got our next hunted creature concept, and this was actually a cycle of 5 creatures. We're only going to talk about hunted dragon here because the point of this video is to go over the different styles in which the hunted concept is being shown, as opposed to showing every creature with hunted in the name. Because there are 5 of these different hunted creatures from the Ravnica block, and the concept behind them is pretty interesting. Essentially what happens is you're getting a creature at a discounted price, but it benefits your opponent. So the hunted dragon is 2 red and 3 for a 6/6 flyer with haste. So it's only 5 mana, and you get a 6/6 flyer with haste. Obviously, already, we're way, way better than the hunted Wampus, right? Now, there's a big catch, as obviously there needs to be with a card like this. So the catch is, when Hunted Dragon enters the battlefield, target opponent creates 3 2/2 white knight creature tokens with first strike. All right, and so what you need to know, because this may throw you off a little if you're old school and you're familiar with the Magic card White Knight, you might be thinking that this makes 3 copies of the actual White Knight card style creature, but the dead giveaway for that is the fact that the word white is not capitalized, but the word knight is. So if it was actually the name of it, if it created white knights instead of white colored knight tokens, then the white word would also be capitalized. The flavor text says, the knights see a mighty quarry, the dragon sees breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I really enjoy the flavor text on this, where it's you can see it from the perspective of everybody who's involved. The dragon's like, yo, I'm gonna eat those knights. And the knights are like, we must take down this dragon that is a threat to the city. The artwork is very straightforward, which I appreciate in this case. You can see the dragon is flying along, soaring ahead, and these knights are pounding down along the pavement, chasing after it, running down along some bridge in an attempt to take this dragon out. In the background, you can see what looks like plumes of smoke rising, almost like the dragon has been running around setting fire to things. Now, from a power perspective, this is clearly a much better deal than the Hunted Wampus. With the Hunted Wampus, you put out the Hunted Wampus, your opponent puts out a creature, you might not even get to use the Wampus right away. They might even put out something that destroys the Wampus. But with this, you know exactly what your opponent's getting. They're getting 6 powers worth of creatures, you're getting 6 powers worth of creatures. On one hand, you're getting the bigger, you're getting the bigger, beefier creature, and you do get to get the first hit with it because it's got flying and haste. So you get to swing in for 6 before your opponent can swing back on you. But because there's 3 knights, it's not like you can just hold the dragon back on the defensive and in one blocking session get rid of all of the creatures. So this is an interesting sort of, you get a creature for cheaper, but there's a steep cost, and the concept of this dragon being hunted by these knights, I mean, that's high fantasy right there. Knights fighting dragons, 100% on point. So that is the representation of that particular hunted concept. Things get a little bit different when we move on to the other hunted creatures that we're going to look at, because next we have Hunted Ghoul, and this is actually back from Avacyn Restored. So it's 1 black for a 1/2, and it's got Hunted Ghoul can't block humans. Flavor text says, even after Handweir was saved, Gissa's lost souls would shamble through, still following the twisted orders of their imprisoned masters. So this ghoul, this zombie here, is essentially just a leftover remnant from a zombie invasion. So they're being hunted by the humans of the different towns that exist out there on the world of Innistrad, right? So the concept with this one is just straight up, it can't block humans because it's being hunted by humans. So instead of having some sort of reward scenario where they go, okay, you get creatures of your own, instead of creating its own hunters, like the Hunted Wampus and the Hunted Dragon cycle did, this is instead representing the concept of hunting as a blocking restriction, which is a wildly different flavor concept, but still very much works. I mean, let's be real, this card is garbage. Like 1 mana for a 1/2 zombie is trash, and the fact that it has blocking restrictions makes it even trashier. So this is a nothing burger card in terms of actual power, but in terms of the flavor behind it, it's pretty good. I mean, take a look at the artwork. You can see this ghoul is like hunched over, kind of trying to shamble quickly away. You can see the humans are chasing after him. In all honesty, I mean, the artwork makes it look like, how did this hunted ghoul even survive, right? Like, it looks like this ghoul should be dismantled into its component pieces within a brief amount of time, just based on the nature of the artwork. But either way, it shows a ghoul in that sort of stance and position you would have if you were being chased. And it's also an interesting flip, because normally when you see, not goblins, normally when you see zombies, they are the ones who are threats to people, right? You have them like trying to bust through windows or standing over someone they're about to eat. Like, zombies are always, or at least almost always, shown in positions of power and fear over humans. And this is a zombie that's afraid of humans and running from them. And that is an interesting flavor flip. So I like that very much. Let's move on to the next hunted card we're going to talk about, and that's Hunted Witness. When this card came out, I actually gave it its own spoiler video because of how unique the flavor felt for it. So Hunted Witness is 1 mana. It's a 1/1, and when Hunted Witness dies, you create a 1/1 white soldier creature token with lifelink. The flavor text says he ferried weapons, spells, exotic animals, but his most dangerous cargo was the truth. And you can see in the artwork, this individual has the same kind of hunted look. It's very similar actually to the Hunted Ghoul that we saw. The lean forwards, slightly hunched over, head turned to the side with a wary concern about the people around him. The fact that in the background, in the alley, you can see both of the people who are in the alley, they're both turned and staring at this guy. What exactly did he witness, right? Like, his life was fine when he was ferrying weapons, spells, exotic animals, but clearly he got tangled up with the wrong people. And as a result, now he's being hunted. And the fact that when he's gone, you create a 1/1 white soldier creature token with lifelink is very interesting, because that could represent a couple of different concepts. One could be that the soldier is part of a corrupt organization that found him and destroyed him. Another could be the soldier token is someone who was sent to investigate his untimely demise and maybe find out more about the crime and the information it was tied to. So overall, a very interesting concept, and you can see how divergent it is from the previous hunted creatures that we talked about. Now, all of this leads us to today's spoiler card, which is Hunted Nightmare. It is 2 black and 1 for a 4/5 menace nightmare. All right? This honestly is a pretty strong card. When we look at the power level of it, in all honesty, I'll be real. The first time I read the card, I went, okay, this isn't too bad. I mean, we also have to cover the fact that when Hunted Nightmare enters the battlefield, target opponent puts a death touch counter on a creature they control. So when I first looked at the card, I was like, you know what? This isn't too shabby. I mean, yeah, you're getting a 4/5, but they do get to put death touch on one of their creatures, and then they can just use it to block this. And that's the hunt sort of thing. Like, they set up a trap for it, hunt it, and take it out. And then I realized, oh my God, this thing has menace. So it only gives you half of the answer. You can give one of your creatures death touch, but you're going to need another creature to block with it to take this thing down. A sort of team companion setup. The flavor text says, the cruelest monsters inspire the greatest tales. The greatest tales inspire the cruelest hunters. So the idea, I guess, is supposed to be, at least how I look at it flavor-wise, with the death touch counter, is it's basically this Hunted Nightmare shows up, and you gather up the information required to defeat the nightmare. So, for example, in the Ikoria novel, they start the beginning of the novel talking about how nightmares, they use bait for nightmares, where essentially it's a jar filled with rotting meat and onions, because those scents combined are what draws in nightmares. So you could see that information being taken even further, where it's like we have particular tools and ways of destroying different kinds of beasts based on where they come from. So to me, the concept of the putting a death touch counter on a creature they control is like, the flavor text says that great tales inspire the cruelest hunters. So essentially, to me, this flavor-wise comes along with like the whole menace needing to double block. This giant nightmare comes out, and it's causing problems for whatever human settlement. So they put out word that they need a hunter to come and take care of it. This hunter comes along with knowledge of how to destroy these beasts, and that knowledge is imparted to one of your creatures. These are the tools you need. The same way that werewolves need silver bullets and vampires and garlic and whatever, these hunters would come along and be like, okay, here are the tools you need, thus giving this creature death touch. Now, obviously, the death touch expands out further than that because it does affect other creatures, but I'm kind of compartmentalizing it specifically for the flavor of this card. You know what I mean? So for me, that's how it's represented. And I really think that that's a fun concept. This is an entire story in a card. You have a nightmare that's being hunted. Why is it being hunted? Well, look at it. It's a gigantic 4/5 menacing nightmare. Clearly, it's been engaged in destructive tendencies towards mankind and needs to be taken down. And in the artwork, you can see this nightmare. It is just kind of running along on, it looks like it has 6 legs. It's got kind of a muscular lion's body with these gigantic claws coming off of its 6 legs. So there's a lot of strength there. You can see it doing big, like, leaping bounds. It's got a half reptilian feeling head with that whole weird snaky tongue. A crazy amount of teeth. Like, there's so many teeth crammed into this thing's mouth that there's no room for any more. It's got all these number of eyes, and it kind of almost looks like it's rotting a little in the face as well. This is in the moonlight, right? This thing is being pictured in the moonlight, but you can see it's running off there. The question is it out stalking prey while it's being stalked? Because there's an individual behind, right, who's got this big scythe, just kind of standing in a tree, like lighting up a light. So the question is that the individual who has the tools necessary? Like, is that the death touch imbued creature who is now going to go and destroy this creature? Either way, man, the flavor concept behind these hunted cards is really, really cool. That's one of the things I absolutely love about Magic the Gathering. The entire, like, you can get a full story out of a card, and that's very enjoyable for me. So, my friends, I'm very interested. What are your takes on this particular card? Do you view it the same way I do, or is there a different angle that you see this whole hunting concept coming from? Let me know what you think about that and the other cards that I talked about. I want to give a big shout out to my patrons and channel members. Thank you very much for supporting my channel. It does mean a lot to me. I think about you guys when I'm feeling low and it makes me feel good. So, to everyone I say thanks for coming by, and I will see all of you very soon, my friends.